I better learn more. But what if somebody asks me a hard question? I don't want to get in that kind of pickle. I've got to have the pastor on speed dial and put him on speakerphone and evangelize and just say, he can do it. Because if I could get you to doubt that, then that would slow you down. If I could get you to believe both lies, oh my goodness, I could just stop the church entirely. Why don't you guys just hang out and do stuff by yourself? I'm fine with that. Just do that. Don't worry about the mission field. Don't worry about the lost people. Just do your own thing. That's cool. The harvest isn't ready. Neither are you. Just have a good time. That'd stop you entirely. The harvest is more ready than you thought it was. And you're far more ready than you may have thought you were to participate in harvest. Let me encourage you with one great, great passage from 1 Corinthians chapter 1. Think for a moment about the Apostle Paul. I don't know how you picture him, but for crying out loud, the guy wrote most of the New Testament. This guy profoundly knew God. He's one of the chief apostles of the church. The Apostle Paul is amazing. Have you ever thought that you could relate with the Apostle Paul? I don't know if you could, but let me just read something so encouraging. I just want to encourage you with this. 1 Corinthians, chapter 2. Chapter 2. Paul is writing here to the church, and he's reminding them of what it was like, how he planted the church, how he evangelized the people, how he did the work of mission. So, how he did the things that we're called to do. Paul's talking about it here, and he says, "When I came to you, brothers, I did not come to you with eloquence or superior wisdom." How many of us have thought, I'm just not ready yet to talk about Jesus until it comes out with a bit more eloquence. I want it to flow real nice. And I want to make sure I've got the right kind of wisdom. Because what if somebody has a real tricky question, I don't know the answer to it, so I shouldn't open my mouth because I don't want to get stuck in that place. But Paul here is saying, hey, when I came to you guys, I didn't come with eloquence. I didn't pack my superior wisdom. So Paul's saying, you mean you can actually reach people without eloquence, without wisdom? He keeps going. He says, I proclaim to you the testimony about God. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. And he says this, "For I resolved to know nothing while I was with you except Jesus Christ and Him crucified." Now listen to this. This is the Apostle Paul. I think in heaven it's Father, Son, Holy Spirit, then probably Virgin Mary, then probably the Apostle Paul. Thinking the Catholics will want the Virgin Mary in there too, right? So, the Apostle Paul, listen to what he says. He says, "I came to you in weakness, in fear, and in much trembling." When you thought about evangelism before, sharing Jesus with people, could you relate with Paul? Weakness. Oh, it's funny. Jesus said that He could. His power is made perfect in our weakness. So that means we're in a real good place to share Jesus. I came in weakness and in fear. Paul was actually, he had fear about sharing Jesus with the people of Corinth. And it says there was much trembling going on. The shakies. He got the shakies when he thought about it. My message and my preaching were not with wise and persuasive words. Some of us thought, well, I'm not ready yet because I've got to learn some of the best ways that I can trick people into becoming a Christian. The persuasive type of evangelism. I don't want to, I'll hide some of the parts of our faith, but I'll find the best part and I'll talk about that and I'll persuade them, I'll trick them into being Christians. I haven't learned that yet, so I'm not ready. No, Paul didn't have that tool in his tool belt either. And then he says this, "My message was with a demonstration of the Spirit's power." Now, you look at your hands. Those things are loaded. You guys know about guns up here. You've got a gospel gun attached to the end of your arm, and it's loaded.
Oh, yeah.
It's loaded. My message came with a demonstration of the Spirit's power, so that your faith may not rest on men's wisdom, but on God's power. You know that faith can be built upon just an encounter with God, a miracle, sign, wonder. So many other things can build faith as well. Paul's just saying, when I came to you, man, I was freaked out. I was freaked out. I was not excited about evangelizing. But I was so convinced of the call, and I was so convinced the harvest was ready, and I was so convinced that in spite of my weakness, I was ready to be used. And a whole church was planted out of Paul's weakness, and he came with a demonstration of the Spirit's power. So what was his technique in bringing Jesus to the Corinthian people? It says he brought with him the testimony about God. Here's the simple approach. If I can encourage you with just some practical application. How can you reach unreached people? Here's something so simple. Paul's approach. Testimony about God. People love stories. I mean, I'm glad I'm saying this at the end of the camp, but if you watch other people in a crowd when somebody's preaching, for me, for example, if I'm not telling a story, most of you are, in dreamland somewhere. As soon as the story comes up, everybody's into it, People love stories. We did an event with our church plant. We called it the neighborhood table. We had a whole bunch of people come. 40 plus people ended up showing up from our neighborhood. We threw a party in our front yard. It was so much fun. Our front yard was just crawling with pagans. It was awesome. And so we fed them and had food and drink for them and all this kind of stuff. It was just a lot of fun. It was a way for us to get to meet our neighbors. And we invited this lady she's a local and international storyteller.